The phone call came on a Wednesday morning in September, just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. My cousin Priya's name flashed on the screen, and something in my stomach tightened before I even answered. We hadn't spoken in months, not since the last family gathering that had ended in uncomfortable silence. "Mira, it's about Uncle Raj," she said, her voice tight. "He's asking about your father's money." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "What do you mean, asking about it?" "He says it belongs to the family, that your father would have wanted it distributed according to Dharma, that you're being selfish by keeping it all." Uncle Raj. Of course it was Uncle Raj. My father had been gone for 6 months. 6 months since the heart attack that took him suddenly, leaving me alone in this world, with nothing but memories and the small inheritance he'd worked his entire life to build. An apartment in the city, some savings, the jewelry that had belonged to my mother before she passed when I was 12. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. It was all I had left of him. "Priya, my father left everything to me in his will. It's legal. It's done." "I know," she said, and she sounded tired. "But Uncle Raj says the will doesn't matter, that there are higher laws than legal ones. He's been talking to the family, Mira. He's been saying things." "What things?" She hesitated. "That you've become too Western, that you've forgotten your duties, that your father would be ashamed of how you're acting." The words hit me like a slap. My father, ashamed of me? The man who'd worked 2 jobs to send me to university? Who'd supported every decision I'd made, even when the family criticized? Who told me the day before he died that he was his greatest achievement? "That's not true," I whispered. "I know it's not," Priya said quickly. "But Uncle Raj has influence. People listen to him, and he's saying that according to tradition, according to what is right, you should share the inheritance with the whole family, especially with him, since he's the eldest male now." I closed my eyes. Uncle Raj, my father's younger brother, the man who'd appointed himself the family's spiritual guide, who quoted scriptures and spoke about duty and tradition while living off the generosity of others. The man who'd never worked a steady job in his life, but always had opinions about how everyone else should live. "I'm not giving him my father's money," I said. "He's not going to accept that," Priya warned. "He's already planning a family meeting. He's going to put pressure on you, Mira, real pressure." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, holding my coffee cup and watching it go cold. Outside my window, Mumbai moved and breathed and carried on like nothing had changed. But inside me, something was hardening, a resolve I didn't know I had. My father had given me this inheritance not just because I was his daughter, but because he trusted me, because he wanted me to be independent, to be strong, to live my own life without bowing to every family demand. And Uncle Raj wanted to take that away. Not because he needed it. He lived rent-free in his wife's family's house. Not because it was right. My father's will was clear. But because he believed that his position as the eldest male gave him authority over everything and everyone, including me. That's when I knew this wasn't just about money. This was about whether I would live my life according to someone else's rules, or whether I would honor my father's wishes and stand on my own. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "Mr. Desai," I said when he answered, "I need to know exactly what my rights are because my family is coming for my inheritance and I'm not giving it up without a fight. This is the story of what happened next. The story of how my family's self-proclaimed guru tried to take everything my father left me, and how I learned that sometimes refusing to bend is the only way to stand.
My name is Meera Sharma, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a graphic designer for an advertising agency in Mumbai, and until 6 months ago, I had a father who was my best friend, my biggest supporter, and the one person in this world who understood me completely. His name was Vikram Sharma, and he was an accountant. Not a glamorous job, not one that made him rich or famous, but he was good at it. Honest, reliable, the kind of man people trusted with their money because they knew he'd never cheat them. He worked for the same firm for 30 years, and when he retired at 60, they threw him a party and gave him a gold watch and told him he'd be missed. He died 2 years later, sitting in his favorite chair, reading the newspaper. The doctors said it was quick, painless, a massive heart attack that took him before he even knew what was happening. I found him that evening when I came over for our weekly dinner. He looked peaceful, like he'd just fallen asleep. I was an only child. My mother, Anjali, had died when I was 12, breast cancer that moved too fast for the treatments to stop. After she passed, it was just my father and me. He never married. He said he'd had his great love, and that was enough for one lifetime. He raised me alone, cooked my meals, helped with my homework, attended every school function. He taught me to be independent, to think for myself, to question things that didn't make sense. He encouraged me to go to university, to study what I loved, to build a career. Meera, he used to say, the world is changing. Women don't need to wait for husbands to take care of them anymore. You take care of yourself. That's the most important thing. The family didn't always approve of how he raised me. They said I was too outspoken, too modern, too career-focused. They whispered that I'd never find a husband if I kept acting like I didn't need one. But my father would just smile and ignore them. Let them talk, he'd tell me. You're not living your life for them. Our family, the extended Sharma clan, was large and complicated, the way Indian families often are. My father had 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. Uncle Raj was the youngest of the 3 brothers, Uncle Mohan was the middle one, and Aunt Kavita was the youngest of all. Uncle Mohan lived in Pune with his wife and 2 sons. He was quiet, practical, worked as an engineer. We saw him at weddings and festivals, but he kept to himself mostly. His sons were younger than me, still in their 20s, still figuring out their lives. Aunt Kavita had married into a wealthy family in Delhi. She had 3 daughters, all married now, all living comfortable lives. She was kind enough when we saw her, but distant. She'd moved up in the world and she didn't spend much time with the rest of us. And then there was Uncle Raj. Rajesh Sharma was 54 years old, 4 years younger than my father had been. He was tall, had a commanding presence, wore white kurtas and kept his hair long, tied back in a small ponytail. He looked like what people expected a spiritual teacher to look like. He'd started this transformation about 15 years ago. Before that, he'd been a struggling salesman, jumping from job to job, never quite making it work. Then he had what he called his awakening. He'd spent 6 months at an ashram in Rishikesh, come back with new ideas about spirituality and dharma and the proper way to live. He'd reinvented himself as a spiritual advisor. He didn't charge money. He said that would corrupt the purity of his teachings. Instead, he accepted donations and gifts from grateful followers. He held satsangs in his home, gave lectures about karma and duty, counseled people on their problems. And somehow, he'd convinced most of our family that he was enlightened. People came to him for advice. Should I take this job? Should I arrange this marriage? Should I invest in this business? Uncle Raj would meditate on it, consult the stars, quote from scriptures, and give his answers. And people listened. People believed. My father had never believed.
Raj found an easy way to live without working, my father would say privately to me. He dresses it up in spiritual language, but it's the same thing he's always done, getting by on other people's generosity while contributing nothing. They'd had arguments over the years, family gatherings where Uncle Raj would give unsolicited advice and my father would politely but firmly disagree. Times when Uncle Raj suggested my father should give more money to family members in need, and my father would say no, they needed to learn to support themselves. The tension was always there, just beneath the surface. Uncle Raj thought my father was too worldly, too attached to material things, too selfish. My father thought Uncle Raj was a fraud who used spirituality as an excuse for laziness. But they were brothers, so they maintained a careful distance, showed up for important occasions, kept the peace. Uncle Raj's wife, my Aunt Sunita, was a quiet woman who rarely spoke. She'd come from a wealthy family. Her father had owned textile factories, and when her parents died, she'd inherited a large house in a good neighborhood. That's where she and Uncle Raj lived, along with their 2 children. Their daughter Priya was my age. We'd been close as children, but as we got older, the differences in how we were raised created distance between us. She was married now to a software engineer living in Bangalore with 2 small children. She was a good mother, a dutiful wife, and she mostly stayed out of family drama. Their son, Arjun, was 28. He'd dropped out of college, spent a few years finding himself, and now helped his father with the spiritual center Uncle Raj had established in their home. Arjun had inherited his father's charisma, but none of his discipline. He talked about enlightenment and posted inspirational quotes on social media, but I'd never seen him actually work a day in his life. This was the family I'd grown up in, a mix of traditional and modern, spiritual and practical, close-knit and fractured. We gathered for Diwali and weddings. We showed up when someone died. We maintained the appearance of unity, even when the reality was more complicated. My father had never been wealthy, but he'd been smart with money. He'd saved carefully, invested wisely, paid off his apartment. When I was growing up, we lived modestly, nothing extravagant, but comfortable. He made sure I never lacked for anything important. After my mother died, he'd taken out a life insurance policy. "So you'll be taken care of," he told me when I was old enough to understand. "So you'll never have to depend on anyone." In his will, he'd left everything to me. The apartment, the savings, the investments, my mother's jewelry, everything. It was straightforward, legal, witnessed by his lawyer and properly filed. The total value was somewhere around 2 crore rupees, about $250,000. Not a fortune by Mumbai standards, where real estate was astronomical, but enough to give me security, enough to pay off my own small apartment, to invest for the future, to have a safety net. My father's funeral had been traditional. We'd cremated him according to Hindu rites, held the ceremonies, fed the mourners. Uncle Raj had taken charge of the religious aspects, chanting the prayers, overseeing the rituals. I'd been grateful at the time. I was drowning in grief, and having someone else handle those details helped. But I noticed things even then. The way Uncle Raj positioned himself as the head of the family. The way he spoke about my father's wishes, as if he knew them better than I did. The way he watched me during the reading of the will, his face carefully neutral, but his eyes calculating. After the will was read and everyone learned that I'd inherited everything, there was a moment of silence. Then Aunt Sunita had said, "Well, of course, She's his daughter. That's natural. But Uncle Raj had said nothing. He just nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something. For the first few months after my father died, I was too deep in grief to notice much else. I went to work, came home, cried, slept, repeated. My apartment felt empty without our weekly dinners. The phone would ring, and for a split second, I'd think it was him calling to check on me, before reality crashed back. The family gave me space during those months. A few calls to check if I was okay, an invitation to Priya's son's birthday party that I'd declined. Mostly they left me alone. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first hint that something was brewing came about 4 months after my father's death. Uncle Mohan called me, awkward and uncomfortable. "Mira, beta, how are you doing?" "I'm managing, Uncle. Thank you for asking." Good. Listen, I don't want to bother you, but Raj has been asking questions about your father's estate, about the apartment." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" "Just whether everything was properly divided, whether the family was considered. You know how he gets about these things." "The will was clear, Uncle. Everything came to me."
Yes, I know. I'm not questioning that. I'm just telling you that Raj is interested. In case he approaches you, I wanted you to know. Thank you for the warning. After we hung up, I'd felt uneasy, but I'd pushed it aside. Uncle Raj could be interested all he wanted. The law was the law. My father's wishes were clear. Then, about 5 months after the funeral, I'd attended a family wedding. A cousin on my mother's side. Uncle Raj had been there with Aunt Sunita and Arjun. He'd approached me during the reception, his smile warm and paternal. "Mira, beta, how are you? We haven't seen you in so long." "I'm well, Uncle. Just busy with work." Of course. Work is important." He'd paused, his hand on my shoulder. "But family is important too. Your father understood that. He was always generous with the family, always thinking about others." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "In fact," Uncle Raj had continued, "I've been thinking about him a lot lately. About his legacy. About what he would want now that he's gone. His will made his wishes very clear," I said carefully. "Legal documents, yes, but spiritual obligations, those are different. Your father was a good man, but perhaps in his grief after your mother, he forgot certain duties. The duty to support his brothers, to provide for the family lineage, to ensure that wealth serves the greater good." "I don't think my father forgot anything," I said, my voice harder than I intended. Uncle Raj had smiled, but it hadn't reached his eyes. "We should talk about this properly, not at a wedding. Come to the house next week. We'll have chai, talk about your father, discuss the future." "I don't think that's necessary." "I insist," he said, and something in his tone had made it clear this wasn't really a request. I hadn't gone to that meeting. I'd made an excuse about work, and Uncle Raj had let it go. But I'd known then that this wasn't over. And now 6 months after my father's death, here was Priya on the phone telling me that Uncle Raj was demanding a family meeting, that he was calling my inheritance into question, that he wanted what he believed was rightfully his. I sat in my apartment that Wednesday afternoon, looking around at the space my father had helped me buy, the furniture we'd picked out together, the photos on the wall of the two of us, at my graduation, at the Gateway of India, at Diwali celebrations. "You take care of yourself," he'd always said. "That's the most important thing." I intended to honor that. Whatever Uncle Raj had planned, whatever pressure the family wanted to apply, I was going to stand firm. Because this inheritance wasn't just money. It was my father's love, his sacrifice, his belief in my independence. It was everything he'd worked for, everything he'd wanted me to have, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. Not even family. Especially not family who wrapped their greed in spiritual language and called it dharma. The family meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday at Uncle Raj's house. Priya called me 3 times that week, each time sounding more anxious. Just come, Meera, just hear what he has to say. If you don't show up, it'll look like you're being disrespectful. It'll make things worse. How can it be worse than him demanding my inheritance? Because right now, he's positioning himself as the concerned elder, trying to guide you. If you refuse to even meet with him, he'll say you've rejected the family entirely. He'll turn everyone against you. I knew she was right. In Indian families, appearances mattered. Respect for elders mattered. If I didn't at least show up, Uncle Raj would use my absence as proof that I'd become too westernized, too selfish, too far removed from my roots. So, on Sunday afternoon, I dressed carefully. A simple salwar kameez, nothing too modern or flashy. I wore my mother's gold chain, the one that my father had given me from her jewelry, a reminder of why I was doing this. Uncle Raj's house was in Bandra, a large old bungalow with a garden that Aunt Sunita's family had owned for generations. The spiritual center Uncle Raj had established took up the entire ground floor. There was a meditation room, a library full of religious texts, and a large hall where he held his satsangs. When I arrived, there were already several cars in the driveway. Uncle Mohan had come from Pune, Aunt Kavita had flown in from Delhi, various cousins I barely knew were scattered through the house. Even some of my father's old friends were there, people who attended his funeral, people who Uncle Raj had apparently recruited for this intervention.
Raj found an easy way to live without working, my father would say privately to me. He dresses it up in spiritual language, but it's the same thing he's always done, getting by on other people's generosity while contributing nothing. They'd had arguments over the years, family gatherings where Uncle Raj would give unsolicited advice and my father would politely but firmly disagree. Times when Uncle Raj suggested my father should give more money to family members in need, and my father would say no, they needed to learn to support themselves. The tension was always there, just beneath the surface. Uncle Raj thought my father was too worldly, too attached to material things, too selfish. My father thought Uncle Raj was a fraud who used spirituality as an excuse for laziness. But they were brothers, so they maintained a careful distance, showed up for important occasions, kept the peace. Uncle Raj's wife, my Aunt Sunita, was a quiet woman who rarely spoke. She'd come from a wealthy family. Her father had owned textile factories, and when her parents died, she'd inherited a large house in a good neighborhood. That's where she and Uncle Raj lived, along with their 2 children. Their daughter Priya was my age. We'd been close as children, but as we got older, the differences in how we were raised created distance between us. She was married now to a software engineer living in Bangalore with 2 small children. She was a good mother, a dutiful wife, and she mostly stayed out of family drama. Their son, Arjun, was 28. He'd dropped out of college, spent a few years finding himself, and now helped his father with the spiritual center Uncle Raj had established in their home. Arjun had inherited his father's charisma, but none of his discipline. He talked about enlightenment and posted inspirational quotes on social media, but I'd never seen him actually work a day in his life. This was the family I'd grown up in, a mix of traditional and modern, spiritual and practical, close-knit and fractured. We gathered for Diwali and weddings. We showed up when someone died. We maintained the appearance of unity, even when the reality was more complicated. My father had never been wealthy, but he'd been smart with money. He'd saved carefully, invested wisely, paid off his apartment. When I was growing up, we lived modestly, nothing extravagant, but comfortable. He made sure I never lacked for anything important. After my mother died, he'd taken out a life insurance policy. "So you'll be taken care of," he told me when I was old enough to understand. "So you'll never have to depend on anyone." In his will, he'd left everything to me: the apartment, the savings, the investments, my mother's jewelry, everything. It was straightforward, legal, witnessed by his lawyer and properly filed. The total value was somewhere around 2 crore rupees, about $250,000. Not a fortune by Mumbai standards, where real estate was astronomical, but enough to give me security, enough to pay off my own small apartment, to invest for the future, to have a safety net. My father's funeral had been traditional. We'd cremated him according to Hindu rites, held the ceremonies, fed the mourners. Uncle Raj had taken charge of the religious aspects, chanting the prayers, overseeing the rituals. I'd been grateful at the time. I was drowning in grief, and having someone else handle those details helped. But I noticed things even then. The way Uncle Raj positioned himself as the head of the family. The way he spoke about my father's wishes, as if he knew them better than I did. The way he watched me during the reading of the will, his face carefully neutral, but his eyes calculating. After the will was read and everyone learned that I'd inherited everything, there was a moment of silence. Then Aunt Sunita had said, "Well, of course, she's his daughter. That's natural." But Uncle Raj had said nothing. He just nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something. For the first few months after my father died, I was too deep in grief to notice much else. I went to work, came home, cried, slept, repeated. My apartment felt empty without our weekly dinners. The phone would ring, and for a split second, I'd think it was him calling to check on me, before reality crashed back. The family gave me space during those months. A few calls to check if I was okay, an invitation to Priya's son's birthday party that I'd declined. Mostly they left me alone. I should have known it wouldn't last. The first hint that something was brewing came about 4 months after my father's death. Uncle Mohan called me, awkward and uncomfortable. "Mira, beta, how are you doing?" "I'm managing, Uncle. Thank you for asking." Good. Listen, I don't want to bother you, but Raj has been asking questions about your father's estate, about the apartment." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" "Just whether everything was properly divided, whether the family was considered. You know how he gets about these things." "The will was clear, Uncle. Everything came to me."
"I don't want blessings," I said. "I want what my father left me." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Uncle Rage's smile faded. "That's a very selfish attitude," he said quietly. "Very disappointing." "My father's will is legally binding," I said, my voice shaking now with anger I was trying to control. "I don't care what you think tradition demands. I don't care what you think Dharma requires. The law is on my side." "The law," Uncle Rage said, and now his voice had an edge to it, "is not everything. There are social consequences to going against your family, Mira. There are consequences to being seen as selfish and ungrateful." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning," Uncle Rage said, "given with love. If you insist on keeping everything for yourself, if you refuse to honor your obligations to this family, people will know. They'll talk. Your reputation will suffer. I don't care." "You should care," Aunt Kavita spoke up suddenly. "You're unmarried, Mira. How will you find a good match if the family is saying you're selfish and disrespectful?
Who will want to marry a girl who puts money above family duty? I stared at her, shocked. I'm not looking for a match. I'm not interested in marriage right now. You see, Uncle Rage said, addressing the room, this is what Western education does. It makes our girls think they don't need family, don't need tradition, don't need anything except their careers and their independence. Your father enabled this attitude, Mira. And now you think you can do whatever you want without consequences. My father supported my independence because he loved me, because he wanted me to be strong, to stand on my own. He spoiled you, Uncle Rage said flatly. He made you selfish, and now we're trying to correct that mistake before it's too late. The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the room, I saw some people nodding, others looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. Uncle Mohan was studying his shoes. Priya was crying quietly. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced myself to stand straight. My father didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. He chose to leave his estate to his daughter because he trusted me to honor his memory in my own way. And I'm not going to disrespect his wishes just because you've decided you're entitled to his money. Sit down, Mira, Uncle Rage said, his voice sharp now. We're not finished. I'm finished. I came here because I thought maybe, just maybe, this was about something other than greed. But it's not. This is about you wanting money you didn't earn, money my father worked his whole life to save, and you're using spirituality and tradition as an excuse to take it. How dare you speak to me this way, Uncle Rage said, standing now too. I'm your elder. I'm the head of this family. You're not the head of my family. My father was, and he's gone. And you don't get to rewrite his legacy just because you think you know better than he did. If you walk out of here without agreeing to share, Uncle Rage said, his voice cold now, you'll regret it. I promise you that. I already regret coming, I said. I turned and walked toward the door. Priya jumped up to follow me, but Arjun stepped in front of me, blocking my way. My father is trying to help you, trying to save you from yourself. You should be grateful. Move, I said. You think you're so smart, so modern, but you're just a greedy little girl who doesn't understand how the real world works. You need this family, Mira. You need us more than we need you. I said, move. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't. Then Uncle Mohan stood up and said quietly, let her go, Arjun. Arjun stepped aside, and I walked out of that house into the bright Mumbai afternoon. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the lock. Priya caught up to me in the driveway. Mira, wait. Don't defend him. Don't tell me he means well.
I'm not, Priya said. I'm not going to defend him. I wanted to warn you. He's not going to let this go. He's going to make your life very difficult. Let him try. Mira, you don't understand. He's already talking to people, family, friends, business associates of your father's, people in the community. He's telling them you've become selfish and disrespectful. He's positioning himself as the concerned uncle trying to guide a wayward niece. People believe him. I don't care what people believe. You should care, Priya said desperately, because in our community, reputation matters, and if he destroys yours, it'll affect everything. Your job, your social life, your future. Please, Mira, at least consider compromising. Give them something, just enough to make them back off. I looked at my cousin, this woman I'd played with as a child, who'd once been my friend. And I saw how scared she was. Not for me, for herself. For what it would mean if I defied Uncle Raj and he turned his attention to her family. I'm not giving them anything, I said quietly. Not 1 rupee, not 1 piece of jewelry, nothing. Then you're on your own, Priya said, and she sounded sad, because nobody is going to stand with you against him. Nobody wants to be on his bad side. I'd rather be on my own than give in to this, I said. I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw Priya standing in the driveway, watching me go. She looked small and defeated. But I wasn't defeated. I was angry, furious actually. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Desai. They want me to give up my inheritance, I told him. They're calling it tradition and dharma, but it's just greed. Can they force me to share? Legally, no, Mr. Desai said firmly. Your father's will is airtight. He left everything to you. As long as you're an adult of sound mind, that will is binding. No one can force you to give up your inheritance. What if they keep pressuring me? What if they turn the whole family against me? That's social pressure, not legal pressure. It's unpleasant, but it's not actionable. My advice, stand firm. Don't engage with their arguments about tradition or duty. The law is clear, and the law is on your side. What if they contest the will? On what grounds? Your father was of sound mind when he wrote it. It was properly witnessed and executed. They could try, but they'd lose. And it would cost them money they probably don't have. That was some comfort at least. But as the days passed, I realized that legal protection didn't shield me from the social consequences Priya had warned me about. My phone started ringing. Aunties I barely knew calling to express their concern about my attitude. Family friends suggesting I should be more flexible and understanding. People from my father's office calling to say they'd heard I was having family troubles and maybe I should consider what my father would have wanted. Every conversation was the same. Gentle pressure wrapped in concern. Suggestions that I was being unreasonable. Hints that my reputation was suffering. And behind every conversation, I could feel Uncle Raj's influence. He was orchestrating this, conducting a campaign to isolate me, to make me feel like I was wrong for standing my ground. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I stopped going to community events. I pulled back from everyone except my closest friends, people who weren't connected to my family, who didn't care about Uncle Raj's opinions. At work, my boss called me into his office one day. Mira, is everything okay? I've been hearing some things. What kind of things? He looked uncomfortable. Just that you're going through some family difficulties, that there are questions about your father's estate, that things might be complicated. My father left me his estate in a legally binding will, I said carefully. There are no complications, just some family members who don't like his decision. Of course, my boss said quickly. I just wanted to make sure everything was above board. We can't have any financial irregularities affecting our employees. I realized with a cold shock that Uncle Raj had reached out to my workplace, that he was trying to make them question my integrity, my trustworthiness, that he was willing to jeopardize my career to pressure me into submission. That night, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not because I was giving up, I wasn't, but because I was so angry and so hurt and so exhausted from fighting people who should have been supporting me.
My father had been gone for 6 months. 6 months, and instead of being allowed to grieve in peace, I was fighting off vultures who wanted to pick over his estate like it was carrion. I looked at the photo of him on my shelf. Him smiling, his arm around me at my graduation. He looked so proud, so happy. "I'm not giving up, Papa," I whispered to the photo. "I promise, I'm going to fight for what you gave me. I'm going to honor your wishes, no matter what they do." But I also knew that this was just the beginning. Uncle Raj wasn't going to back down, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The next day, I called Mr. Desai again. "I want to document everything," I said. "Every phone call, every pressure tactic, every attempt to coerce me. Can we build a case for harassment?" "Possibly," Mr. Desai said. "But that's a nuclear option, Mira. Taking legal action against your own family, it's not something you can walk back from." "I know," I said, But I also know they're not going to stop, so I need to be ready. I need to protect myself. Then start keeping records, he said. Save every text message, every voicemail. Write down dates and times of phone calls, names of people who contact you. If this escalates, we'll need evidence. So I started building my case. Every call from an auntie expressing concern, documented. Every visit from a family friend suggesting I be reasonable, noted. Every subtle threat, every piece of social pressure, recorded. I was preparing for war, a war I never wanted, with people who should have been on my side. But if they wanted to fight, I was going to fight back, with everything I had. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about whether I would let bullies control my life, whether I would give in to emotional manipulation, whether I would betray my father's wishes to make peace with people who didn't deserve peace. And I'd already decided I wasn't giving them a single thing. Not now. Not ever.
One of the men with them stepped forward and knocked on the door. Hard. Not threatening exactly, but firm. Insistent. "Just talk to us, Mira," Uncle Raj said, his voice gentler now, almost pleading. 5 minutes, that's all we're asking. 5 minutes to show you the documents, to explain the situation. Then you can decide what to do. I had my phone in my hand. I should call the police. I should call my lawyer. I should do something other than stand here terrified in my own home. But I also knew how this would look. Family members at my door asking to talk, and me calling the police on them. Uncle Raj would spin that into proof that I'd lost my mind, that I was paranoid and unstable. "Slide the documents under the door," I said finally. "I'll look at them and get back to you." "That's not how this works," Uncle Raj said. "We need to discuss them. We need to come to an agreement today." "Why today?" "Because we've been patient with you for long enough. Because this has dragged on for 2 months and you refuse to be reasonable. Because it's time to settle this one way or another." The threat was clear. Agree to their terms or face consequences. I was still standing there trying to decide what to do when I heard another voice. My neighbor, Mrs. Kapoor from across the hall. "Is everything all right here? Mira, are you okay?" Thank God for Mrs. Kapoor. She was 60-something, a widow who lived alone and kept an eye on the building. She'd been kind to me since I moved in, always checking on me, especially after my father died. "I'm fine, Mrs. Kapoor," I called out. "Just some family members who won't take no for an answer." "Do you want me to call building security?" Mrs. Kapoor asked, her voice sharp. Uncle Raj turned to her, his smile instantly charming. "That won't be necessary, Auntie. We're just here to talk to our niece about family matters. Nothing to worry about." "She sounds worried to me," Mrs. Kapoor said, "and I don't like men loitering in the hallway making women uncomfortable. If you're family, you can call her and make an appointment like civilized people." I could have kissed her. "We're leaving," Uncle Raj said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "But Mira, this conversation isn't over. You can't hide behind locked doors and neighbors forever. We'll be back." I heard their footsteps retreating down the hallway. Then Mrs. Kapoor knocked gently on my door. "Mira, beta, open up. It's just me." I opened the door. Mrs. Kapoor took one look at my face and ushered me back inside. "Sit," she commanded. "I'll make tea." She moved around my kitchen like she owned it, pulling out cups, heating water. I sat at my dining table, shaking. "Who were those men?" Mrs. Kapoor asked as she poured the tea. "My uncle, my cousin, and I don't know who the other two were. They looked like trouble, like the kind of men people hire when they want to intimidate someone. That's exactly what they'd looked like, muscle, enforcers, there to make sure I felt threatened. My uncle wants my inheritance, I said quietly. My father left everything to me, and my uncle thinks he deserves a share. He's been pressuring me for months, but now he's claiming my father owed him money, that this apartment was bought on borrowed funds. Mrs. Kapoor snorted. Nonsense. I knew your father. He visited you here dozens of times. We'd chat in the hallway. He was proud of you, proud that you'd bought this place on your own. He never mentioned any loans or debts. Uncle Raj says he has documents. Documents can be forged, Mrs. Kapoor said flatly. I've lived a long time, Beta. I've seen families fight over money more times than I can count. And I've learned that when someone claims they have proof but won't show it to you properly, it's usually because the proof doesn't exist.
You need to call your lawyer, Mrs. Kapoor said, right now. Tell him what happened, and you need to call the police too. File a report. Even if nothing comes of it, there should be a record that these men came to your home and threatened you. I don't know if it counts as a threat. A man shows up at a woman's door with his son and two strangers, demands entry, claims her home belongs to him, and refuses to leave when asked? That's a threat, Beta. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She was right. I called Mr. Desai first. He did what? Mr. Desai's voice was sharp with alarm. Mira, that's intimidation. That could be grounds for a restraining order. He claims my father borrowed money to buy this apartment, that there are documents. If such documents existed, I would have seen them when we went through your father's estate. Every debt, every obligation, they were all accounted for and cleared. Your father died with no outstanding loans. I'd stake my reputation on it. So, Uncle Raj is lying? Either lying or deluded. Either way, he has no legal claim to your apartment. But Mira, you need to take this seriously. If he's willing to show up at your door with muscle, he might be willing to escalate further. What do I do? File a police report. Document everything and consider a restraining order. It's drastic, but if he's threatening you in your own home, that will destroy any remaining family relationships. Mira, with all respect, what family relationships? These people are harassing you, threatening you, trying to steal from you. They're not acting like family. Don't sacrifice your safety to maintain a fiction of family unity. After I hung up with Mr. Desai, I called the police. They sent an officer to take my statement. He was young, looked bored, clearly didn't think this was a serious matter. Family dispute, he said, writing slowly in his notebook. They threatened me. They refused to leave when I asked them to leave. But they did leave eventually, after my neighbor intervened. So they left when asked by someone else. That's not really a crime, ma'am. They claimed they had legal documents but wouldn't show them to me properly. They brought men I didn't know to intimidate me. Did they touch you? Threaten physical harm explicitly? No, but then it's hard to call it intimidation in a legal sense. It sounds like your uncle wants to talk about inheritance and you don't want to talk to him. That's a civil matter, not a criminal one. I could see where this was going. The police weren't going to help. In their eyes, this was just a family squabble, not worth their time. Can you at least make a record that I reported this? I asked. Of course, we'll file the report. But honestly, ma'am, my advice? Work this out within your family. These inheritance disputes, they get ugly if you involve the law. Better to compromise, split things fairly, keep the peace. After he left, I sat on my couch and let the frustration and fear wash over me.
Everyone kept telling me to compromise, to be reasonable, to give Uncle Raj what he wanted, as if standing up for my rights, honoring my father's wishes, protecting what was mine, as if those were unreasonable things. The next few days were worse. Uncle Raj launched what I can only call a full-scale campaign against me. He started posting on social media, nothing directly about me, but pointed messages about duty and family and young people who'd lost their way. His followers, people from the community who attended his satsangs, started commenting, sharing, adding their own thoughts about the decay of traditional values. My name never appeared, but anyone who knew our family would know exactly who he was talking about. Then he called a community meeting at a local temple. He said he wanted to discuss the erosion of family values in modern India and the importance of respecting elders and tradition. Over 100 people showed up. I heard about it from Priya, who called me crying.
He spent an hour talking about ungrateful children who abandoned their duties, she said. Everyone knew he meant you. People were nodding, agreeing. Mira, he's turning the entire community against you. Let him, I said, but my voice was hollow. You don't understand. This isn't just gossip anymore. People are taking sides, and most of them are taking his side because he's an elder, because he's respected, because he sounds so reasonable and concerned. He's painting you as a selfish, westernized girl who's lost touch with her culture. I'm just following my father's will. Nobody cares about the will, Priya said desperately. They care about what looks right, and it looks like you're being greedy and disrespectful. Mira, please, just give them something. 10%, 20%, whatever it takes to make this stop. If I give them anything, they win, I said. They learn that bullying works, that if they pressure someone enough, threaten them enough, humiliate them enough, they get what they want. I won't teach them that lesson. Then you're going to lose everything fighting them, Priya said. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being stubborn. But I couldn't shake the image of my father's face when he told me about the will. This is for you, Beta, so you never have to depend on anyone, so you can make your own choices. Promise me you'll use it wisely, but use it for yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for accepting what I'm giving you. I promised, and I intended to keep that promise. The real turning point came 2 weeks after Uncle Raj showed up at my door. I received a legal notice from a law firm I'd never heard of. It was a formal demand that I submit to arbitration regarding my father's estate, as there are serious questions about the validity of the will and the circumstances under which it was executed. I called Mr. Desai immediately. They're questioning the will? On what grounds? Let me read this. He was quiet for a moment. They're claiming your father was under undue influence when he wrote the will, that he was grieving your mother, not thinking clearly, and that you manipulated him into leaving everything to you. That's insane. The will was written years after my mother died. I know. This is a fishing expedition. They're hoping you'll agree to arbitration instead of going to court because arbitration is private. They can pressure you there without public scrutiny. It's a tactic. What do I do? You ignore it. Or rather, I respond on your behalf, declining arbitration and noting that the will was properly executed and there are no grounds to question it. If they want to challenge it, they can take it to court, where they'll lose. But they'll drag it out. They'll make it expensive and exhausting and... Yes, Mr. Desai said quietly. That's the point. They're trying to wear you down, make you tired enough that you'll settle just to end the fight. I'm already tired, I admitted. I know, but you're also right. And sometimes being right is exhausting. The question is, are you willing to endure the exhaustion to protect what's yours? I thought about my father, about how he'd worked 2 jobs to send me to university, about how he'd saved every rupee carefully so I'd have security, about how he'd trusted me with everything he'd built. Yes, I said, I'm willing. Then we fight back properly this time. I'm going to send them a cease and desist letter. They need to stop contacting you, stop spreading rumors, stop harassing you. If they continue, we'll file for a restraining order and possibly a defamation suit. That will make things worse. Mira, with respect, it can't get much worse. They've already come to your home with intimidation tactics. They've already turned your community against you. They've already sent you false legal threats. At some point, you have to stop being defensive and start being offensive. You have to make it clear that harassing you has consequences. He was right. I'd been trying to avoid escalation, trying to keep the peace, trying to be the reasonable one. But reasonable only works when both sides are willing to be reasonable. And Uncle Raj had no interest in being reasonable. Do it, I said. Send the letter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what was coming. The fight would get uglier. The pressure would intensify. Uncle Raj would paint me as attacking the family, as being vindictive and cruel. But I also thought about the alternative, giving in. Handing over a portion of my inheritance just to buy peace, living the rest of my life knowing I'd betrayed my father's wishes because I wasn't strong enough to stand up to a bully. That was worse. That was unthinkable. Around midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Arjun. We need to talk, alone, without the lawyers and the drama. Meet me at Café Mondegar, 3 p.m. Give me 1 hour. If you still want to fight after that, fine, but hear me out first. I stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct told me it was a trap, another manipulation, another attempt to pressure me without witnesses. But a small part of me wondered, what if Arjun had something genuine to say? What if there was information I needed to hear? I texted back, I'll meet you, but I'm bringing a friend. If that's not acceptable, we have nothing to talk about. He responded immediately, fine, but make sure they stay quiet. This conversation is between you and me. The next day, I asked my friend Neha to come with me. Neha was a lawyer herself, sharp and no nonsense, and she'd been supporting me through this whole mess. She agreed immediately. If he tries anything, she said, I'll shut it down. We arrived at Café Mondegar at 3. It was crowded, noisy, full of tourists and students. Arjun was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking nothing like the confident enforcer who'd stood outside my door. He looked tired, stressed, almost vulnerable. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. His eyes flicked to Neha. And who's this? My friend. She's staying. Fine. He waved a hand dismissively. Order whatever you want. This is on me. We ordered coffee. Then Arjun leaned forward, his voice low. My father is going to destroy you. You know that, right? This is not going to stop. He's not going to back down. He'll spend every rupee he can access. He'll call in every favor. He'll turn every person he knows against you. He's obsessed. Then why are you here? I asked. Because I'm tired of it, Arjun said, and he sounded genuinely exhausted. Because I've watched him do this to other people over the years and I'm sick of being part of it. Because, he stopped, ran his hair through his hair. Because you're right. Uncle Vikram left you that money. It's yours. And what my father is doing, it's wrong. I stared at him, shocked. This was the last thing I had expected. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know what you're up against, Arjun said. Those documents he mentioned, the promissory notes about the apartment, they're fake. He had them created. There's a guy he knows who makes fake legal documents for people involved in property disputes. He paid 10,000 rupees for papers that claim your father borrowed money from his father 30 years ago. My stomach turned. That's fraud. Of course it's fraud, but good luck proving it. The guy who made them isn't going to testify against my father, and my father will swear up and down that they're real, that he just never mentioned them before out of brotherly affection. Why would you tell me this? I asked again. You're his son. Why would you betray him? Arjun looked at me with something that might have been shame. Because I'm 28 years old and I've never had a real job. Because I've spent my entire adult life helping my father manipulate people, and I'm disgusted with myself. Because he dropped his voice even lower. Because a few months ago, I met someone. A girl. She's smart and independent and has her own career. And when I told her about what my father does, about how we live, she looked at me like I was pathetic, like I was a parasite. And she was right. He pulled out an envelope from his bag and slid it across the table. This is everything I know about my father's finances. Bank statements showing he's not as spiritual and unworldly as he pretends. Records of donations from wealthy followers that are basically payments for services. Evidence that he's been living well while claiming to have renounced material concerns. If he tries to take you to court, this might help. I picked up the envelope, my hands shaking. Why are you doing this? Because I want to be better than him, Arjun said simply. Because I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror. Because that girl I met, she told me she'd never date someone who didn't have integrity, and I realized I don't have any, but maybe I can start building some now. Neha leaned forward. If Mira uses this information and your father finds out you gave it to her, what happens to you? Arjun shrugged. He'll probably disown me, throw me out, I don't know. But I have a friend who runs a tech startup. He said I could come work for him, learn the business properly. It won't pay much at first, but it's honest work. And right now, honest work sounds better than living off my father's schemes. I didn't know what to say. This was Arjun, the same Arjun who'd blocked my way at Uncle Raj's house, who'd called me greedy and ungrateful. And now he was sitting here, giving me ammunition against his own father. You could be lying, I said carefully. This could be another manipulation. It could be, Arjun agreed, but it's not. Look through that envelope. Show it to your lawyer. It's all real. And Mira, I'm sorry. For everything. For how I've treated you. For the things I said. You didn't deserve any of it. He stood up, dropped some money on the table for the coffee we hadn't touched, and walked away. Neha and I sat there in stunned silence. Then she grabbed the envelope and opened it. Holy shit, she breathed as she flipped through the papers. Mira, this is gold. Bank transfers, receipts, records of property transactions he's been involved in. If even half of this is real, your uncle is not the simple spiritual teacher he pretends to be. I took the papers from her and looked through them. There were transfers of large sums from various people, payments labeled as spiritual guidance fees and consulting charges. There were records showing Uncle Raj had invested in real estate, something he'd always claimed was beneath him. There were even bank statements showing he'd been taking money from the donations people made to his spiritual center and using them for personal expenses. This changes everything, Neha said. If he tries to attack you publicly, you can expose him, show him who he really is. That would destroy him, I said slowly. He's trying to destroy you, Neha pointed out. Turnabout is fair play. Was it? Was I willing to do to Uncle Raj what he was doing to me? Was I willing to expose him, humiliate him, tear down the reputation he had built? I thought about it all the way home, about what kind of person I wanted to be, about whether fighting fire with fire made me just as bad as him. But I also thought about my father, about his hard work, his integrity, his belief in doing what was right, even when it was difficult.
And I realized, protecting what was mine, honoring my father's wishes, standing up to a bully, those weren't wrong things. Those were right things. I didn't have to use the information Arjun gave me unless Uncle Raj forced my hand. But having it meant I wasn't powerless anymore. I had leverage. I had protection. I had a fighting chance. And that changed everything. The cease and desist letter from Mr. Desai was delivered to Uncle Raj 3 days after my meeting with Arjun. It was formal, precise, and unambiguous. Stop all contact with Mir Sharma. Stop spreading false information about her or her father's estate. And stop making fraudulent claims about debts that do not exist. Any further harassment would result in legal action, including potential criminal charges for fraud and intimidation. I expected an explosion. I expected Uncle Raj to escalate even further, to go nuclear. Instead, there was silence. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. No phone calls, no visits, no social media posts. It was like Uncle Raj had simply disappeared. I didn't trust it. Neither did Mr. Desai. He's regrouping, Mr. Desai said, planning his next move. Don't let your guard down. I kept the envelope Arjun had given me in my safe, along with copies stored digitally in 3 different places: insurance, protection, a nuclear option if I needed it. But I also started doing something else. I started reaching out to the people who'd known my father well, his colleagues from work, his close friends, people who'd been at his funeral. I invited them for tea, for lunch, for coffee, and I asked them to tell me stories about him. I learned things I'd never known, that my father had quietly paid school fees for a colleague's daughter when the colleague fell on hard times, that he'd mentored young accountants at his firm, teaching them not just the technical skills, but the ethics of the profession, that he was the one people came to when they needed advice, when they needed someone to listen. "Your father was the most honorable man I ever knew," one of his old friends told me. "He could have cut corners 100 times, padded numbers, made extra money, but he never did. He slept well at night because his conscience was clear." These conversations reminded me why I was fighting, not just for money or property, but for the memory of a good man, a man who'd lived with integrity and deserved to have his final wishes respected. And slowly, word started spreading, not through social media campaigns or community meetings, but through quiet conversations. People who'd known my father started asking questions about why his estate was being contested, why his brother was claiming bets that never existed, why a legally valid will was being challenged. The tide was starting to turn. Then 3 weeks after the cease and desist letter, I received a phone call from Aunt Sunita, not Uncle Raj, his wife. "Mira beta, can we talk?" Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Just you and me, please." I was immediately suspicious. "Is this about the inheritance?" "It's about my husband and my son and the truth." We met at a small restaurant in Juhu, far from our neighborhood where people might recognize us. Aunt Sunita looked older than I remembered, worn down by something I couldn't quite name. She ordered tea, but didn't drink it, just wrapped her hands around the cup like she needed the warmth. She said, "I don't have much time. Raj thinks I'm at the temple. If he knew I was meeting you, why are you meeting me?" Aunt Sunita looked at me with tired eyes. "Because I've been married to that man for 30 years, and I'm tired of watching him hurt people. Because Arjun told me what he did, what he gave you, and for the first time I'm proud of my son. Because your father was a good man, and what Raj is doing to his memory is wrong." She pulled out a piece of paper from her purse. "This is a statement.
witnessed and notarized. It says that, to my knowledge, your father never borrowed money from Raj's father, that the promissory notes Raj claims to have are fraudulent, that I am willing to testify to this if necessary. I stared at the document. Why would you do this? He's your husband. He's my husband, Aunt Sunita agreed, but that doesn't make him right, and it doesn't mean I have to support him when he's wrong. She finally took a sip of her tea. You know, I came from money. My parents were wealthy. When I married Raj, I thought he was going to be someone important, someone successful. Instead, he bounced from job to job, always failing, always blaming others. Then he discovered he could make a living playing guru, and I watched him become something I didn't recognize. You could have left. I could have, she said, but I was raised to believe that marriage is forever, that a good wife supports her husband, that family unity is more important than personal happiness. So I stayed. I kept quiet. I enabled him. Her voice cracked. But I won't enable him in this. Your father was kind to me when my own family looked down on me for marrying someone they thought was below me. Vikram never did. He treated me with respect, and I won't let my husband destroy his daughter to feed his own greed. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm sorry, Mira. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry I let Raj bully you for months. I'm sorry I didn't protect you the way your father would have wanted. I reached across the table and took her hand. It's not too late. You're protecting me now. He will never forgive me for this. I know. He'll make my life miserable, probably. But I have to do it anyway, because if I don't, I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. I'll be as corrupt as he is. She squeezed my hand. You're braver than I've been, standing up to him, refusing to back down. I admire that. Your father would be proud. After Aunt Sunita left, I sat in that restaurant for a long time, holding her statement. 2 people from Uncle Raj's own family had now turned against him. 2 people who were choosing truth over loyalty, integrity over comfort. It gave me hope. The next day, I received an unexpected call from Uncle Mohan. Mira, I owe you an apology. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. I should have spoken up at that family meeting, should have told Raj he was out of line, but I was a coward. I didn't want the conflict. It's okay, Uncle.
It's not okay. You're my brother's daughter, my niece, and I let Raj intimidate you because it was easier than standing up to him. That's not okay. He paused. I talked to some of Vikram's old colleagues. They told me stories I'd never heard about how generous he was, how principled. And I realized Vikram left everything to you because he trusted you, because he knew you'd use it wisely, that you'd honor his values. Who am I to question that? Who is Raj? Thank you for saying that. I'm not just saying it, I'm acting on it. I called Raj yesterday, told him I wouldn't support him in this fight anymore, that if he took you to court, I'd testify on your behalf, that the family needs to respect Vikram's wishes. What did he say? He called me a traitor, said I was choosing you over him. But you know what? I am choosing you, because you're right and he's wrong. And it's past time someone in this family said that out loud. One by one, the walls around Uncle Raj were crumbling. People were seeing through his spiritual facade to the manipulation underneath. His own wife and son had turned against him. His brother had withdrawn support. But I knew he wouldn't give up easily. Men like Uncle Raj don't surrender. They double down. The attack came through social media, not from Uncle Raj's account, but from accounts of his followers, his students, people who believed in his teachings. Suddenly, there were posts everywhere about me.
not naming me directly, but describing a young woman who'd abandoned her family, who'd rejected traditional values, who'd chosen money over dharma. Someone created a fake account in my name and started posting terrible things, greedy statements, disrespectful comments about elders, Western-minded opinions about family obligations. It was clearly fake, clearly meant to damage my reputation, but people were sharing it, believing it, commenting on how shameful I was. I called Neha in a panic. They're destroying me online, making me look like a monster. Then it's time to tell the truth, Neha said. All of it. I don't want to expose Uncle Raj publicly. He's exposing you publicly, with lies. Don't you think the truth deserves to be heard? She was right. I had been trying to take the high road, to handle this quietly, but Uncle Raj had made it public, and if it was going to be public, people deserved to know the real story. I wrote a post that night. It took me 3 hours and a dozen drafts. I kept it simple, factual, and honest. My name is Meera Sharma. My father, Vikram Sharma, passed away 6 months ago. He left me his estate in a legal will that was properly witnessed and executed. Some family members have disputed this, claiming I should share the inheritance according to tradition. I have refused, not because I'm greedy or disrespectful, but because I'm honoring my father's explicit wishes. In the months since his death, I've been harassed, intimidated, and threatened. False claims have been made about debts that don't exist. My reputation has been attacked. My character has been questioned, all because I chose to respect my father's will rather than give in to pressure. I'm sharing this not to air family grievances, but because lies have been spread about me and I deserve the chance to tell the truth. My father was an honorable man who worked hard his entire life to provide for me. The least I can do is honor his memory by standing firm in his wishes. To those who believe I'm being selfish, I'm being faithful. To those who think I should compromise, some principles can't be compromised. To those who question my values, I value integrity, honesty, and respecting the wishes of the dead. I didn't want this fight. I don't want the attention. I just want to live my life in peace, honoring my father's memory. But I will not be bullied into giving up what is rightfully mine. Not by family, not by community pressure, not by anyone. I attached a photo of my father and me, both of us smiling. Then I hit post. Within an hour, it had been shared dozens of times. Within a day, hundreds. People who'd known my father started commenting, sharing their own stories about his integrity, his kindness, his honor. People who'd been manipulated by family members over inheritance started sharing their own stories, expressing support. The fake account that had been posting in my name was reported and taken down. People started questioning the narrative Uncle Raj had been spreading. The tide was fully turning now. 3 days after my post, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From someone who understands." The email was from Katie Bailey, the woman my father had left at the altar all those years ago. "Dear Meera," it began, "I read your post and felt compelled to reach out. You don't know me, but I knew your father many years ago. We were engaged to be married before he met your mother. What my father did to me was wrong. It was hurtful and humiliating, and it took me years to heal from it. But I want you to know something. He came to see me about 5 years later. He apologized, sincerely, without excuses or justifications. He told me he'd handled things badly, that he was sorry for the pain he'd caused, and that he hoped I'd found happiness. I had found happiness by then, I'd married someone else, someone who loved me truly, and I was able to forgive your father, not because what he did was okay, but because I could see he'd grown, matured, and genuinely regretted his actions. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that your father was a good man. Not a perfect man. None of us are perfect, but a good man who learned from his mistakes and tried to do better. Whatever your family is saying about him, whatever they're using to justify taking from you, they're wrong. Honor his wishes. Honor his memory. You're doing the right thing. With respect, Katie Bailey Henderson. I read that email 3 times, crying harder each time. This woman, who had every right to hate my father, to speak ill of him, to support Uncle Raj's claims that my father was selfish and unreliable, instead, she was defending him. Defending me. I asked her permission to share her email publicly, and she agreed. I posted it with a simple message. Even those my father hurt along the way found it in their hearts to forgive him and see his good character. Perhaps his own family should do the same? That email did what nothing else could. It humanized my father, showed his capacity for growth and redemption, and made it impossible for Uncle Raj to paint him as purely selfish. The final piece fell into place a week later. Uncle Raj announced another community meeting, another chance to discuss family values and modern decay. But this time, when he started speaking, someone in the audience stood up. It was one of my father's old colleagues, a man named Mr. Sinha, who'd worked with him for 20 years. With respect, Rajesh ji, I knew your brother well, and I know you're misrepresenting his character and his wishes. Vikram was clear about wanting his daughter to be independent, to be taken care of. He spoke about it often. What you're doing, trying to take from her what he gave her, is dishonoring his memory. He tried to shut him down, but others started speaking up. People who'd known my father, people who'd seen Uncle Raj's manipulation before, people who were tired of watching him use spirituality as a weapon.
The meeting dissolved into chaos. Uncle Raj tried to maintain control, but he'd lost the room. People were walking out. The narrative he'd so carefully constructed was falling apart. I wasn't at that meeting. I heard about it from multiple people who were, but I was told that Uncle Raj left his own spiritual center that day looking defeated, diminished. The next morning, I received a call from a number I recognized, Uncle Raj's cell phone. But it wasn't Uncle Raj on the line. It was Aunt Sunita. "He's had a breakdown," she said, her voice shaking. "Last night, after the meeting, he locked himself in his meditation room and wouldn't come out. When I finally got in this morning, he was just sitting there, staring at nothing. He won't speak. He won't move." "Is he okay? Does he need a doctor?" "The doctor is with him now. He says it's exhaustion and stress, that Raj needs rest." She paused. "Mira, I think he's finally realized he can't win, that he's lost, and he doesn't know how to accept that." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. I hadn't wanted to destroy Uncle Raj. I just wanted him to leave me alone. "Don't be sorry," Aunt Sunita said. "You stood up to him when no one else would. You exposed what he really was, and maybe this breakdown will be good for him. Maybe he'll finally have to face himself, face what he's become." "What happens now?" "Now we heal. All of us. Me, Arjun, you, the family. We heal from the damage he's done." "Will you be okay? Financially, I mean." "I still have my family's house. I have some money of my own that Raj never touched. And Arjun is working now, earning his own way. We'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. We'll be free." After that call, I sat in my apartment, legally and rightfully mine, and let myself feel everything. Relief, sadness, victory, grief. It was all mixed together, complicated and messy. I'd won. I'd kept my inheritance. I'd honored my father's wishes. I stood up to a bully and refused to back down. But winning felt heavier than I had expected, more complex. Because families had fractured, relationships had broken. Uncle Raj, for all his faults, was still a human being who was suffering. Still, I'd do it all again, because the alternative, giving in to his demands, would have been worse, would have betrayed everything my father taught me. That afternoon, I went to my father's grave. I hadn't been there since the funeral. It had been too painful. But now, I needed to talk to him. "I did it, Papa," I said, kneeling beside the headstone. "I kept what you gave me. I didn't let them take it. And I'm sorry if it caused pain, if it broke the family apart, but I couldn't betray your trust. I couldn't let them win." The wind rustled the trees around me. Birds sang. Life continued, indifferent to my small human drama. "I understand now why you were so insistent about the will, why you made sure everything was legal and clear. You knew this might happen. You knew Uncle Raj might come after it, and you prepared me. You gave me the strength to stand firm. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything." I placed flowers on his grave, marigolds, his favorite. And I sat there for a long time, feeling his presence, his love, his protection. He'd given me more than money or property. He'd given me the example of how to live with integrity, how to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, how to honor your principles, even when everyone tells you to compromise. That was the real inheritance, and no one could take that away from me.
We're not close. We probably never will be. But there's mutual respect there, and acknowledgement that we both chose the harder right over the easier wrong. Priya and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship. It's different now, more cautious, more boundaried, but it exists. She apologized for not standing up for me sooner, for being too scared of her father to do what was right. I accepted the apology because I understood. Fear makes cowards of us all sometimes. Her children are growing up seeing a different model now. They see their grandmother working and earning money. They see their uncle building a career honestly. They see their cousin, me, who stood firm and didn't break. Maybe that will matter someday. Maybe they'll remember that when they face their own difficult choices. Uncle Mohan kept his word. He testified that my father never borrowed money from anyone, that the promissory notes were fabricated. His statement, along with Aunt Sunita's, made it impossible for Uncle Raj to pursue any legal challenge. The case, if it had ever really been a case, dissolved into nothing. Uncle Mohan and I have dinner occasionally when he's in Mumbai for work. He tells me stories about my father as a young man, filling in gaps in my knowledge. I'm grateful for that. Every story helps me understand my father better, helps me see the full picture of who he was. Aunt Kavita went back to Delhi and I haven't heard from her since. I think she was embarrassed by how things turned out. Embarrassed that she'd supported Uncle Raj without questioning his claims. Some people can't admit when they're wrong, so they just disappear instead. I've made peace with that.
My work life stabilized once the rumors Uncle Raj had spread were debunked. My boss apologized for doubting me, and I've since been promoted to senior designer. The irony isn't lost on me. The financial security my father wanted me to have has only grown stronger because I fought to protect it. I've made new friends through work and through hobby groups I joined. A book club, a hiking group, a volunteer organization that teaches design skills to underprivileged youth. These people know me as Meera the designer, Meera the reader, Meera the volunteer, not Meera the girl who fought her family over inheritance. It's refreshing to have parts of my identity that aren't defined by that conflict. I even started dating someone a few months ago. His name is Samir. He's an architect and he makes me laugh in a way I didn't think I'd be able to laugh again. I told him about the inheritance battle on our 4th date, worried about how he'd react. He listened to the whole story, then said, "Your father would be proud of you. You honored his wishes and stood up for yourself. That takes real courage." I cried right there in the restaurant. Happy tears, relief tears, tears of finally being seen and understood. We're taking things slowly, but there's potential there. And the fact that I can even imagine a future with someone, can even think about building a life beyond this conflict, that feels like victory too. The community's perception of me has shifted as well. Once the truth came out about the fake documents, about Uncle Raj's finances, about Katie Bailey's email, people started treating me differently. Not with pity exactly, but with a kind of quiet respect. I'd stood up to pressure that would have crushed most people. I'd refused to compromise my principles despite enormous social cost. Young women especially have reached out to me. Daughters fighting with families over career choices, over marriage decisions, over inheritance disputes of their own. They ask how I found the strength, how I managed the fear, how I dealt with the isolation. I tell them the truth. It was hard. It was terrifying. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days I wanted to give up. But I had something worth fighting for. My father's love, my own integrity, my right to live life on my own terms. And when you have something worth fighting for, you find strength you didn't know you had. I also tell them about the importance of documentation, of legal protection, of building a support network outside of family, practical things that made the difference between winning and losing. Some of them listen. Some probably think I'm being too harsh, too uncompromising. That's okay. Everyone has to make their own choices about what they're willing to endure and what they're willing to fight. I have been back to my father's grave many times since that first visit after the conflict ended. I go on his birthday, on the anniversary of his death, and sometimes just when I need to feel close to him. I talk to him about my life, about the decisions I'm making, about the future I'm building. "I'm okay, Papa," I told him last month. "I'm more than okay. I'm happy, and I know that's what you wanted most." Sometimes I imagine what he'd say if he were here. Probably something like, "I knew you could do it, beta. I always knew you were strong enough." And maybe I was. Or maybe his belief in me made me strong enough. Either way, I found the courage to stand firm, and that's changed everything. The legal bills from Mr. Desai's representation were substantial, but worth every rupee. He sent me a final statement last week, marking the case officially closed. There would be no further challenges, no more legal threats. It was truly over. I framed his last email to me. "Meera, it has been an honor to represent you. You showed remarkable courage in the face of intense pressure. Your father chose well when he left his estate to you. You've proven yourself worthy of that trust." Worthy of that trust.
That's what this was always about. Proving to myself, to the world, to my father's memory that I was worthy of the gift he'd given me. Not just the financial inheritance, but the trust, the confidence, the belief that I could stand on my own. I think about Uncle Raj sometimes and what led him down that path. The insecurity that made him create a false persona, the shame of failure that drove him to manipulate others, the envy of his older brother's steady success, the desperation that made him think he was entitled to money he hadn't earned. In another universe, maybe he could have asked for help honestly. Maybe he could have said, "I'm struggling, I need support," instead of wrapping his greed in spiritual language and calling it dharma. But that would have required humility, and humility is something Uncle Raj never learned. I've learned it though. This whole experience has taught me humility, not the false humility of backing down when I'm right, but the real humility of acknowledging my limitations, my fears, my need for support. I couldn't have won this fight alone. I needed Mr. Desai's legal expertise, Neha's friendship, Mrs. Kapoor's intervention, Arjun's conscience, Aunt Sunita's courage, Uncle Mohan's integrity. We're all connected, all dependent on each other in ways we don't always acknowledge. And sometimes being strong means knowing when to ask for help. Last week, I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I invited some of my father's old friends and colleagues to my apartment for dinner. We cooked his favorite foods, shared his favorite drinks, and told stories about him. We laughed and cried and remembered. Mr. Sinha, the man who'd stood up at Uncle Raj's meeting, raised his glass and said, "To Vikram, a man of integrity who raised a daughter of equal integrity. May his memory be a blessing." We all drank to that. And in that moment, surrounded by people who'd loved my father and supported me, I felt complete. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd honored what mattered. I'd protected his legacy. I'd lived according to the values he taught me. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and thought about everything that had happened. The pain and the victory, the loss and the growth, the family that had fractured, and the new connections that had formed in the cracks. Would I have chosen this if I'd known what it would cost? The relationships that would break? The stress and fear and exhaustion? Yes, 1,000 times yes.
Because the alternative, giving in, compromising my principles, betraying my father's wishes, that would have cost me something more important. It would have cost me my integrity, my self-respect, my ability to look at myself in the mirror and be proud of who I see. And no amount of family peace is worth that price. I learned something crucial through all of this. Family isn't just about blood. It's about mutual respect, shared values, genuine love. And when those things are absent, when family becomes a weapon to control you, to manipulate you, to take from you, then family is just a word, a label that doesn't mean what it should. My real family now includes Mrs. Kapoor, who watched out for me when I needed protection. It includes Neha, who stood by me through every difficult moment. It includes Mr. Desai, who fought for my rights with tenacity and skill. It includes my father's friends, who honored his memory by supporting his daughter. These are the people who've earned the title of family, not through birth, but through action, through choosing to show up when it mattered. And that's a lesson worth everything I went through to learn it. If you're reading this story, if you're facing something similar, a family member who demands what isn't theirs, who uses guilt and obligation as weapons, who threatens and manipulates to get what they want,
I want you to know something. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect what's yours. You have the right to honor your own integrity over someone else's expectations. It won't be easy. People will judge you. They'll call you selfish, disrespectful, ungrateful. They'll use every tool they have to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel like you're the one doing wrong. But if you know in your heart that you're right, if you're honoring the wishes of someone you loved, if you're protecting your own well-being and future, then stand firm. Don't bend. Don't break. Document everything. Get legal help. Build a support network. Protect yourself. And remember, compromise is beautiful when both sides are acting in good faith. But when someone is trying to bully you, manipulate you, or take from you what they have no right to, compromise is just another word for surrender. Don't surrender. Fight for what matters. Fight for yourself. Your future self will thank you. The sun has climbed higher now, and my apartment is bright with morning light. I have work to do today, a new project for a client, a hiking trip this weekend with friends, dinner with Samir tomorrow night. Life continuing, rich and full, and mine. On the table beside my coffee cup sits my mother's gold chain, the one I wore the day I refused to give in to Uncle Raj's demands. I wear it often now, a reminder of where I came from, who loved me, what I'm protecting. My parents gave me many things: love, education, values, security. But perhaps the greatest gift was this: the example of living with integrity, of making hard choices and standing by them, of honoring what matters even when it costs you. I'm my father's daughter, and that means standing firm when the winds blow against me. That means protecting what's mine. That means refusing to let bullies win, no matter how they dress up their bullying in spiritual language or family obligation. I refuse to give them my inheritance, and in doing so, I claimed something even more valuable: my own strength, my own voice, my own right to live life on my own terms. That's an inheritance no one can take away. That's freedom.